A note before Chapter 5. This chapter begins the part of my story involving an eating disorder. I've written it to be honest about what it felt like, not detail how it worked.
Today is Saturday, July 25th, 2026, and I am here with Benjamin, and we are going to talk about his time spent within the Northwestern Athletics Department.
Chapter 5, Miller Lite. I arrived in Evanston at the beginning of August, and my two older brothers were already there, Alex, a senior, Sam, a junior. Both were established on the team, and I stepped into the role I'd known my entire life. The third Miller brother, Miller Lite. That was my nickname around the football guys, around the facility. I couldn't be the third Miller brother as a player anymore, but I could still represent what that meant. The discipline, the dedication, the work that defined what it meant to be one of us. So that's how I showed up, as a student coach, as the health and wellness version of Benjamin I'd built over the previous 8 months, as someone who didn't slip, just held the routine harder, kept the body leaner, stayed inside the structure that had become my identity. I was back in the role I'd been born into. I just wasn't playing the game anymore. I enjoyed it the first couple weeks. The routines felt familiar. Camp, film meetings, workouts, practice, all the small moments in the locker room. But the familiarity wasn't coming from my year as a high school coach. It was coming from somewhere older than that. From every visit I'd made to Northwestern over the past 3 years to watch my brothers. From every weekend I'd spent in their world before I was supposed to step into it. From every story they'd brought home. The role I was stepping into wasn't new. It was the one I'd been preparing for my entire life. I was just finally inside it. Except I wasn't inside it the way I was supposed to be. I had a locker in the coach's locker room right next to the players' locker room, close enough to hear them, see them, walk through the same hallways every day. The weight room I worked out in was the same weight room I was supposed to be lifting in as a player, but the players were in there in groups, fueling for the season. I was in there alone, cutting weight as a coach, watching camp from the wrong side of every interaction. That was the pressure, not the work. The paradox, being inside the life that was supposed to be mine, but now on the outside. And the pressure I used to escape through video games when I was a kid was now building underneath the routine. The pressure I'd been carrying since I was old enough to notice my brother's shadow. The release valve was gone. The alcohol was off the table. The video games were off the table. Nothing was answering the pressure anymore. It was just building. The paradox underneath everything was older than Northwestern. It was older than the role I'd stepped into. It was older than the cage I'd built that summer. It was my pre-stroke self torturing my post-stroke self. That's what was actually happening, not just watching from the wrong side of every door, not just being in the building without playing the game. Every choice I was making was the pre-stroke version of me forcing the post-stroke version of me to live up to a life that wasn't his anymore. The rigidity of the routine, the 18 hours of fasting, the workouts during the team's lunch hour, stepping into the third Miller brother role exactly the way I would have as a player. The pre-stroke Benjamin was supposed to be at Northwestern as a player. So the post-stroke Benjamin showed up anyway, as a coach, and tried to fit into the role through the only thing he had left: discipline, restriction, control. I was punishing the body that had survived for the life it could no longer live. The 5 weeks between arriving at Northwestern and that first game against Stanford, the routine tightened further. The fasting that had moved from 16 to 18 hours before I left for school now pushed to 20, 4 hours to eat. That was the window. I didn't sit down and decide to do that. The body just got less room to want anything. The rigidity I'd built over the summer needed to feel like progress, and the only way for it to feel like progress was to keep tightening. to feel more discipline, to feel more control, to feel something internal at all. That's what I'd been taught my whole life as an athlete. The way to gain is to be in pain, push harder, restrict more, earn the result. I was giving my body less, but what my body actually needed was more. More attention, more love, more care, more compassion, more gratitude for what it could still do. Instead, I gave it less fuel, stricter rules, and a quiet anger every day that the right side didn't work the way the left one did. I didn't have any language for that yet. I just had the only equation I knew: less, harder, stricter, more. My days looked like this: 6 a.m. in the facility, meetings, practice, film. Lunch for the football players came around noon. While they ate, I got my workout in 12 to 2. Then my first meal at 3. More meetings through the afternoon into the evening. A walk through around 7 p.m., dinner, sleep. Repeat. They were preparing for a fight that came on Saturdays. My fight was every single day. A battle just to show up, just to wear the mask, just to be Miller Lite in a new environment the same way I'd been in high school. I'm fine, I'm here, I'm supporting you. The mask held completely, not because it was perfectly built, because nobody was looking. Everyone was inside their own preseason bubble. The schedule of college football in August doesn't leave room to notice that your brother is starving, doesn't leave room to ask why he's working out alone while everyone else eats lunch. From the outside, I just looked lean, healthy, the body of someone who took his routine seriously. Every coach, every player, everyone's eyes were locked on the first Saturday of the year, as they should have been. That's the job. So the paradox deepened in private, watching the team prepare, watching my brothers prepare, being in the same facility, the same meetings, the same field. Just on the outside, the first game of the season was Stanford. Northwestern headed to Palo Alto. I stayed in Evanston. I was planning to watch the game from my brother's apartment, but on the bike ride over, something else took over. I wasn't the one making decisions anymore. Something was pedaling for me, something was steering. I stopped at Pizza Hut, ordered a pizza, picked it up, got back on my bike, stopped at CVS, walked through the aisles, 2 or 3 boxes of cookies, 2 or 3 protein shakes, 2 or 3 chocolate bars, backpack full. I couldn't stop it. Was it the starved body finally taking what I'd refused it for 5 weeks? Was it the emotional body finally finding the escape route from the pain of the pre-stroke life I was being forced to live in my post-stroke body? It was both. It was something I didn't have a name for yet. It was just bigger than me. I arrived at the apartment just around kickoff. By the time the game started, I was already inside the binge. The pizza box opened, the CVS bag spilled across the coffee table. The first cookie already in my mouth before I'd thought about reaching for it. The game ran in the background. Northwestern, Stanford, my brothers on the screen. The life I was supposed to be living playing out in front of me. I was watching it the way you watch something in your peripheral vision. Present enough to know it was there, gone enough that none of it was landing. What was landing was the food, the pizza, the cookies, the chocolate, the protein shakes, everything at once. My body taking what it had been refused for 5 weeks, my mind somewhere else entirely. I couldn't stop. And for the first time since the blackouts in senior year, for the first time since the cookies in the hospital, I didn't have to feel anything. Not the stress, not the pressure, not the expectations of being Miller Lite in a program I was supposed to be playing in, not the paradox of being inside and outside at the same time. Just escape, just relief. I wasn't even hungry by the end. I couldn't stop chewing. I couldn't stop swallowing. The disgust was already there, eating in a way that didn't feel like mine, in a body that wasn't asking for any more food. My mind knew it was wrong. My mouth couldn't stop. I didn't think this works. I didn't think I can use this. not consciously, but my body registered something my brain didn't have words for yet. There was a way to make the feeling stop. There was a tool I hadn't known I had access to. The seeds that had been planted in the hospital had finally sprouted. Northwestern lost that game. I don't remember watching the end of it. The next morning, the guilt was waiting for me before my feet hit the floor. The disgust from the day before hadn't gone anywhere overnight. It had just been waiting for me to wake up, and I could feel it in my stomach, not as nausea, as the same endless pit that had opened up in the summer of 2018 when my dad told me football was over. The pit hadn't closed since the food from the night before was still inside me. Pizza, the whole CVS bag, and the body was full, but the pit was emptier than it had been in 5 weeks. Eating that much hadn't filled it. It had reminded me it was there. The only thing I knew how to do, the thing I'd been taught my entire life as an athlete, was move forward, play the next play, show up the next day. So I did the only thing that equation allowed. I made the rules stricter, more cardio that morning, longer time on the incline. The lift in the afternoon, I pushed harder. The eating window shrank again. Less food, cleaner food. Earn back the ground I'd lost. Punish the body that had failed me. Because that's what I thought it was. A failure, not a signal, not a question. A failure to be corrected by tightening every screw I had. The guilt was the engine, the rigidity was the answer, and every screw I tightened that morning was building the exact conditions that would make the next binge inevitable. But once the team returned, the seed that had just sprouted began to grow. Over the next 10 days, one more game and then a bye week, I held the routine. The players' lounge had a balcony that looked out over part of Lake Michigan. Once you walked through the doors, there was a wall, and behind the wall were chairs. Out of sight from everyone inside, out of sight from anyone walking below. The lake on one side, the wall on the other, and chairs in between with nobody to know they were there. That became the spot. 3 or 4 times across those 10 days, I disappeared into that corner with a backpack full of snacks from the athletic facility. The first week, the week leading up to the next Saturday game, it happened twice. Both times I ate until the guilt arrived, then got up and went back inside. Both times I tightened the screws the next morning. More cardio, smaller window, earn back the ground. Then the bye week started. Monday I binged again, same spot behind the wall, same backpack, same routine of tightening the next morning. Tuesday evening something shifted. I stuffed the backpack fuller than I had any of the times before, walked back to the spot behind the wall, sat down with the lake in front of me, and I ate until there was nothing left in the bag, past the point of needing it, past the point of wanting it. Past the point my stomach could comfortably hold. My body filled up in a way it never had before. Tight, painful, wrong. The guilt didn't stay guilt this time. It became something heavier, something I couldn't move forward through with more cardio the next morning, something the routine couldn't earn back. I needed the food out of me. That's the only language I had for it. Get it out. Make the body match what the rules said it should be. Erase what I'd just done. I went into the bathroom of the players' lounge, and for the first time in my life, I made myself throw up. I walked out of that bathroom and called my mom on the way back to my dorm. When she picked up, she could hear it. Flat, dazed, hurting. The voice of someone who didn't have the words yet for what had just happened, but couldn't pretend it hadn't. By the time I got to the dorm and she could see my face on the phone, she already knew. The hood on my jacket was up over my head. That was the family signal, a thing I'd picked up from my brothers without us ever saying it out loud. When one of us wasn't doing emotionally well, the hood of our jacket went up. Once my mom saw the hood, she knew. She didn't need me to explain. I let her in a little bit. Not all the way. Not the spot behind the wall. not the backpack, not the throwing up, just enough to tell her that being a student coach at Northwestern was hurting me in a way I couldn't keep absorbing, that something was happening to me that I didn't understand. She listened, she didn't try to fix it, she didn't try to talk me into staying. My dad, when he heard, didn't either. Both of them immediately supported me leaving. No hesitation, no questions about the future, what it would look like to walk away from a role I'd been preparing for my whole life. Just do whatever you need to do. We're with you. That was the first time since June of 2018 that anyone outside of me knew that something was wrong. Not the whole picture, not even most of it, but a corner of it. A crack in the mask held open by the hood and a flat voice on a phone. That night I made the decision I was going to quit. The meeting was that Thursday, 2 days after the purge, 2 days after the call to my mom. I walked into Dr. Jim's office that morning with no plan. I wasn't going to sit him down and tell him I'd been having an identity crisis for over a year. Wasn't going to tell him about the spot behind the wall or what had happened in the bathroom of the players' lounge on Tuesday. Wasn't going to tell him about the fasting or the workouts during lunch or any of the engineering underneath what he was about to hear. I was just going to give him the part of the truth I could give, the part that was true enough to act on without being more than I could say out loud. I told him I couldn't continue in the student coaching role right now, that I just wanted to go be a student. He didn't push, didn't ask me to explain. He looked at me and saw what my mom had seen on the phone 2 nights before, even though I wasn't wearing the hood anymore, even though my voice wasn't flat. He saw something, and he didn't make me name it. Ben, I completely understand and I support you going and just being a student at Northwestern Group. And if any time in the future you want to come back and retake this role, you always have that opportunity. You always have a place here in the Northwestern Athletics Department. Thank you, Dr. Jim. We stood up, we shook hands, and that was it. The role I'd been preparing for my entire life ended in a 5-minute conversation in a corner office on a Thursday morning. No collapse, no drama, just an honest sentence and a man across a desk who didn't make me say more than I had to.